Have you ever wondered why exact same prompt can produce completely different answers from ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot or any other AI-driven solutions you are using? Sometimes the response is very short and factual, while other times it's very creative and out of the box and imaginative. The reason is often a single parameter, temperature. In this video, I will explain exactly what it is, and I will show you a demo that can completely change your perspective of how temperature can change the value of LLM based solution. This is one single parameter that completely controls what the response of LLM should be. If you set up the low temperature, you're likely to get focused and stable and repeatable response. It doesn't matter how many times you ask the same question, it will give you exactly or close to the same answer. However, if you set up the mid value, like somewhere around 0.4 to 0.7, then you can think of the response to be towards natural sounding, more useful from the factual perspective, and balanced. While if you set up extremely high number, like temperature being 1 or towards 1.5, then you can expect the response to be surprising, very creative, out of the box, and it is highly unpredictable. That's how the temperature change the response of the chatbot. For example, if you have the text that you ask chatbot to complete, you say the sky is, and you have dash, and you ask the chatbot to say complete the sentence. Then if you set up the temperature, doesn't matter how many times you ask the same question, it is highly likely it will give the response blue, because in the backend cosine similarity, probably sky comes to very close to blue, and that's why it is giving us every time the response blue. If you set up the temperature to be somewhere 0.4, 5, 6, 7, then probably it will change the response to be once blue, then next time maybe beautiful or clear, and so on. It is likely to change the response. However, it looks some realistic that we can think of. The sky is clear, sky is beautiful, sky is blue, etc. However, if you set up the temperature to be extremely high, then it can pick up the response from anywhere, and that is very unpredictable. Here, the pizza and the sky has nothing to do with each other. It will use some imagination and it will give pizza as a response. And that is very likely, even though the probability of the pizza coming as a response is extremely low. Another example can be if you say, write one slogan for AI consulting company. If you set up the low temperature, it will be very deterministic. Every time you ask the question, it will say practical AI, real business results. They are very consistent. Now, if you set up the moderate, then it will be adding some additional context. It will say smarter decision powered by AI. So if you ask the same question again, it is likely to change the response, but it will be more natural and acceptable. And now if you choose very high temperature, it says turn data sparks into AI fireworks. Look at this here. Data and sparks, AI and fireworks. Probably this is out of the box response. However, it might have its own use case. Sometime you want to use that for the brainstorming and story writing. Of course, you want very creative, very out of the box and imaginative responses on those storytelling or brainstorming ideas. You can think of some ideas which might be not in your radar, but sometime the AI tool will give you some ideas on a problem that you are trying to do the brainstorming. It can be very useful. However, you have to use that response very carefully. If you set up the temperature to be super low, that can be very useful for RAG based solution where you are trying to extract the answer from the documents and you're trying to use that as a context and you want very specific and deterministic response. Now you can use that for coding. You want a support bot that has very deterministic response based on the fact, based on the information. in the data that support bot provides response to the customers. When it comes to medium temperature, email writing, or content writing for a company, these are the tasks that you would probably set up the temperature to be around 0. 0.4 to 0.7 or 8. These are perfect balance on these specific tasks. So depending upon what exactly you are trying to do, the temperatures can vary, but you might not want to set the temperature to be extremely high number for the RAG-based task, or you may not want to shrink the temperature value for the brainstorming and storytelling or story kind of task. So choose the right temperature value based on what task you are trying to solve. If you want very reliable and consistent answer, you want to choose the lower side of the temperature, which will give you accurate and precise output and very predictable. And also, it is best for technical and factual tasks. You might want to use the higher temperature value for highly creative response, and also you want the diverse and varied perspective, different angles of the responses every time, even though you're asking for the same question, and it generates very random variations of the responses. Now, your question can be, what exactly should I start if I do not know what should be the best value for the temperature? Maybe you begin with 0.2 to 0.7 and see how you are getting response from the chatbot, and you can tune or change those parameters based on what task you are trying to solve. Now, I have surprise for you. Let's look at the live example that I want to show you how changing temperature can change the response of the chatbot. I will ask a simple, fun question. I will say, describe a sunset in one short paragraph so that it's easy to read and identify what exactly it is giving us. Let's begin with very, very low temperature, which is 0. And let's send question to the chatbot. Here, look at this here. As sun dips below the horizon, the sky transforms into a breathtaking canvas of vibrant hues. Fiery oranges and deep purple blend seamlessly with the soft pinks and golden yellows, etc. So let's ask this question again to the chatbot. And not surprisingly, it has given exactly the same response as it had given earlier. Let's send that again. Doesn't matter how many times you are asking the question, response is exactly the same. As expected, temperature 0 means very deterministic, repetitive, and highly probabilistic response that you can think the chatbot will give. Now let's increase the temperature slightly towards 0.4 and let's see what exactly the response is going to be. It is close to the similar, but you can think this response size has changed, response context had changed at some capacity. If I would run that again, the response is highly likely to change. Look at this. The change response had changed, but the context or the content that the message it is delivering is close to the same. How about changing temperature to be extremely high? And now let's read some part of the text. As the sun begins to dip beyond the horizon, the sky erupts in vibrant hues of oranges, crimson, and lavender, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Wispy clouds catch the fading light, transforming into the delicate silhouettes against the brilliant canvas, etc. Let's send this question again, or the task again, to the chatbot. As the day softly surrenders to night, the sun dips towards the horizon. Look at this. This was nothing that we had got earlier. Let's send that question again. And now look at this here. Completely different response comparing to what we had got earlier. If I would change that value, then still the response will be different. Now, not surprisingly, if I change that back to 0, then you will get the response what you had got very first time. Exactly the same response. Temperature is the actual value which determines what your output should be. One of the most important parameter, not only the parameter, but one of the most important parameter that you want to wisely set up based on what task you are achieving. For your last information, I would give you the source code that was used to develop this quick chatbot. I used the OpenAI model and LangChain framework to develop this chatbot. So I had done that here. And also I set the temperature range for the slider, and the temperature values here for the slider was set up so that user can choose any temperature they like to. So there was a function defined. That function takes the different temperature value, so user message and temperature value, so that the temperature would be the temperature value that user will choose in the slider, and that will be fed to the GPT-4o mini, and you have the message that is the system prompt, the instruction to the chatbot. So that was a quick walkthrough about the temperature and how changing those temperature will change the answer. Thank you so much for watching this video until the last. If this video was helpful, please do not forget to give that thumbs up. Please stay tuned for the next video. Until then, please enjoy learning.